What if the very foundation of a charity built to honor wounded heroes is hiding a financial story no one wants to say out loud? What if $63 million didn't go where everyone assumed it did?
Two effing grifters. So
I just wanted to thank all of you for welcoming me into the Invictus family.
The moment that number hit the airwaves, something shifted. Not curiosity, suspicion. Because this wasn't just any event. This was Invictus. A symbol, a promise. A carefully constructed narrative of healing, resilience, and redemption. And yet, behind the applause, behind the emotional speeches, behind the carefully timed photo ops, whispers began to grow louder. Where did the money actually go?
Somehow, this balloons from an event that cost $1 million the first year they did to $63 million now. Perry has ballooned the budget from $1 million. It cost $1 million to do it with 400 people. It's now $63 million with an extra 140 people. What the
$63 million for just over 500 veterans. Break it down and suddenly the math starts to feel uncomfortable, almost intrusive. Over $100,000 per participant. And that's where the questions begin to multiply. Not slowly, not politely, explosively, because when numbers don't feel right, people start digging. And what they found only deepened the mystery.
but people are a little upset about where the money is going because right now there's been a 63% drop in actual grants to wounded warriors, despite the fact that they have more money in their bank than ever from carryover. And in Vancouver,
A 63% drop in actual grants to wounded warriors. Read that again. While revenue increased, support decreased. That contradiction alone is enough to stop anyone in their tracks. Because how does that happen? How does a charity grow richer while its core mission appears to shrink? That's not just a gap, that's a disconnect. And critics noticed immediately. Comparisons started surfacing like cracks in glass. Other events, similar missions, dramatically smaller budgets, cleaner numbers, fewer questions. The American Warrior Games, roughly $2 million. Germany's version, even less.
Prince Harry seemed to have left Scott Snow behind. Competed in 2023 Invictus in Dusseldorf. He was injured. He was in a wheelchair that did not have restraint straps, so basically defective hardware. It drives me crazy. I mean, Prince Harry founded these games. He's the public face of Invictus. And has anyone from his office bothered to reach out to you? Has anyone bothered to, from Invictus, after that initial meeting, bothered to reach out and say, hey, let's help out here?
I never heard from anybody, to be honest with you.
And suddenly, Invictus wasn't just being admired. It was being measured, scrutinized, compared. Why was it so expensive? Why did it feel so inflated? And more importantly, who was benefiting from that difference? Because when people see a gap that big, they don't just ask questions. They assume something is hiding in it. Administration, overheads, invisible costs that never make headlines but quietly swallow millions. That's where the spotlight shifted next. Not onto the athletes, not onto the stories of resilience, but onto the system itself. And that's when the narrative began to change. This wasn't just about Prince Harry anymore. This was about the Sussex brand and everything attached to it. Then came the taxpayers, millions from governments, public money, real money. Suddenly, this wasn't just a charity issue, it became political. Because when taxpayers get involved, patience disappears. People want clarity, they want transparency, they want answers that make sense. And what they got instead was silence wrapped in redacted documents, missing details, blacked out figures, contracts no one could fully see. And nothing fuels suspicion faster than incomplete information. Because when something is hidden, people don't assume innocence, they assume intention. And then, just when it couldn't get more complicated, another layer surfaced. Dual compensation theories, mysterious companies, inconsistent filings. Even if nothing was proven, the optics alone were enough to ignite speculation. Because perception in scandals like this is everything. And the perception, it wasn't clean. But here's where it gets even more unsettling. Because this isn't just about numbers. It's about identity, about ownership, about legacy. Was Invictus ever truly Harry's creation? That question didn't come from nowhere. It came from patterns, from whispers, from timelines timelines that didn't quite align. Some say it started as a royal initiative, funded, supported, shaped long before Harry became its face. Others insist it was his vision, sparked from personal experience. And somewhere in between those two versions, the truth sits quietly, refusing to fully reveal itself. Because if Invictus wasn't entirely his, then what exactly is being protected here? A mission? Or an image. And that's where the story takes a turn no one expected. Because while critics dissect the finances, something else is happening in parallel. A shift in focus, a change in narrative, one that moves attention away from veterans and towards something far more unpredictable. Meghan, her presence, her influence, her timing. Every appearance becomes a moment. Every moment becomes a headline. And every headline pulls attention further away from the core mission. Whether intentional or not, the effect is undeniable. Conversations drift. Focus shifts, and suddenly Invictus isn't just about wounded warriors anymore, it's about the spectacle surrounding them. And that's when people start asking the question no one wants to say too loudly. Is this still a charity, or has it become something else entirely? Because when luxury hotels, private jets, and media coverage start dominating the conversation, the optics begin to change. The emotional weight of the mission starts competing with the visual weight of the lifestyle. And for many watching from the outside, that contrast feels impossible to ignore. And just when you think the pressure might ease, it escalates. New locations, new funding demands, new governments being pulled into the equation. Cities already struggling financially now being asked to invest millions. And people living there, they're not clapping. They're questioning because they've seen this story before and they don't like how it ends. And now, as the next chapter of Invictus approaches, the tension isn't fading. It's building quietly, relentlessly, like something waiting just beneath the surface. And just when it felt like the storm couldn't get louder, it did, because the deeper people looked, the less this looked like a simple budgeting issue and more like a carefully managed illusion, one that blurred the line between purpose and performance. The spotlight wasn't fading, it was intensifying. And now it wasn't just about money anymore, it was about control, image, and survival. Because behind the scenes, something else was unfolding. Quietly, strategically, the push for future games. Birmingham, San Diego. New cities, new promises, new millions on the table. But here's what made it feel different this time. Governments weren't just agreeing anymore. Some were hesitating. Some were pulling back. And that hesitation, that's where the real story begins. Australia's sudden shift didn't go unnoticed. One moment, funding is uncertain. The next, it's reinstated under pressure. But why the reversal? Was it genuine support or damage control? Because when decisions flip that fast, people don't see confidence. They see confusion, and confusion breeds doubt. And then comes the most uncomfortable layer of all, the idea that Invictus might not even need Harry anymore, that the machine has grown too big, too structured, too global to rely on one face, that he's no longer the engine, just the emblem, a symbol of something that now operates far beyond him. But if that's true, then why is he still so tightly connected to it? Because for some critics, the answer is brutally simple. Without Invictus, what remains? Strip away the titles, the roles, the royal ties, and what's left standing as his defining legacy? Invictus isn't just a project. It's the anchor, the identity, the one thing that keeps the narrative intact. And that makes every question about it dangerous. Because if Invictus falls under serious scrutiny, it's not just a charity being questioned. It's the entire image built around it. And this is where the tension becomes impossible to ignore. Because every time Harry appears in public, whether it's a global event or something as unexpected as an NBA Finals game, the reaction isn't admiration anymore. It's analysis. People aren't just watching, they're decoding. Where is he sitting? Who invited him? Why does it feel different now? The shift is subtle, but it's real. And then there's Meghan. Always there, always part of the equation, but never without controversy, because her presence doesn't just accompany the event, it transforms it. Instantly, the focus moves, the conversation changes. Within minutes, it's no longer about the athletes. It's about her, her expressions, her interactions, her outfits, and that's where things start to feel intentional. Because when fashion discussions dominate a veterans event, it raises a question that's difficult to ignore. Is this just media obsession, or is it part of a larger strategy? Because every appearance generates visibility, every outfit generates coverage, and every moment feeds the machine. But at what cost? Because while headlines debate designers and body language, the original mission quietly slips into the background. And that's what frustrates critics the most. Not just the spending, not just the unanswered questions, but the feeling that something meaningful is being overshadowed again and again. And then come the whispers that push everything into even darker territory. Private jets, jets, 5-star accommodations, production crews, documentaries, a level of luxury that doesn't sit comfortably next to a narrative of service and sacrifice. Even if justified, even if explainable, the contrast alone is enough to make people uneasy, because perception doesn't need proof. It just needs patterns. And the patterns, they're stacking up. Then suddenly, the conversation shifts again, this time toward influence, recognition, awards. When Harry appears on global lists alongside the biggest names in sports, it doesn't just raise eyebrows, it ignites debate. Not because people don't recognize his work, but because they're questioning how these decisions are made. Who's backing them? What connections are quietly shaping the narrative behind the scenes? Because once that idea takes hold that influence is being managed, curated, elevated, it changes everything. Every achievement gets questioned. Every appearance gets dissected. Every opportunity feels engineered. And now we're here, standing at a moment where the questions are louder than the answers, where every new Invictus announcement doesn't just bring excitement, it brings scrutiny, where every appearance, every number, every detail is being watched more closely than ever before. Because this isn't just about a $63 million price tag anymore, it's about trust. It's about whether the mission that once inspired millions is still intact or slowly being reshaped into something else entirely. Something bigger, something more complicated, something that no longer belongs solely to the veterans it was meant to serve. And the most unsettling part, no one has definitively answered that question. Not yet, because the story isn't over. Not even close. In fact, it feels like it's just beginning to unravel. And as more eyes turn toward what happens next, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. The next chapter of Invictus won't just be watched, it will be judged. If you want, I can now turn this into viral YouTube titles plus thumbnails or 4 short scripts like your previous format.